Okay, welcome to this talk on actuarial diversity and inclusion, insights from Malaysia. It is hoped that the concepts here are relevant for any actuarial community, but we are looking at a survey and whatnot from the Malaysian market. Okay, so we'll have a brief introduction, then we'll talk about insights, breaking the challenges down, conclusions and recommendations, and then questions and answers. I'll give you my email address and whatnot, but you're welcome to put questions directly in the comments, and we're happy to discuss it there. Okay, so as an introduction, we conducted a survey about diversity with 32 respondents in Malaysia. I know it's only 32. It's quite hard to get people to talk about diversity and DEI, honestly speaking. So it is hard to get people to volunteer their comments. And this is when I was in the DEI committee at Society of Actuaries, it was just as difficult to get a lot of people to talk about this kind of a subject. But it's hoped that with this number, it just gives a little bit of data and something for us to talk about. The whole idea of this presentation at Actuarial Society Malaysia, ASM event, is to start the discussion, start the process. And we'll take it further from there. Based on what we talk about here, we can drill down and get into more details. So the idea of this survey was to just gain insights into diversity within the actuarial profession in Malaysia. And then just to point out, although diversity or DEI can be very sensitive and divisive, really, there's actually a lot to unpack here, which we can do with actuarial curiosity. For instance, diversity by race is very sensitive, but diversity also means by location and economic status, so many things. So for instance, in Malaysia, if you went and you took the whole Malaysian community, okay, and you said, okay, all the actuarial people in Malaysia, and you cut them up. Okay, the ones that are from Selangor and KL, the capital. Okay, then you have the people from Penang, another major center, or Johor, another area. That's probably 90% of all the actuaries. But we have 15 states. Does that mean that people from Sabah or Sarawak have smaller brains than in the other states? No, of course not. Does that mean that they're worse at math? They're better off being doctors or lawyers? No, of course not. It's a question of diversity and getting them into this amazing profession, right? Okay, so was it hard to find information on actuarial science? Almost 60% said yes. Okay, that was surprising to me, I have to admit. My thinking was that in the world that we're in now, I mean, look at this. 7 out of 8 correspondents under 25 and 45 plus said yes. So, okay, the older group, fine, I understand. But the ones that are under 25, everything's online, right? How difficult could it be? But what this is saying is, yes, it was difficult. To be precise, you don't know what you don't know, right? You need some sort of exposure to what kind of professions there are before you can say, yes, I like it or I don't like it. So that was a challenge here, in my opinion. Chinese found it much harder to get information, 9 out of 11, as compared to Malays. If you go to any ASM event, you'll see that, there's proportionally, there's a lot more Chinese in meetings than non-Chinese. So it's sort of an overweighting of Chinese as opposed to Malays or Indian. But what this says is that we can't just look at Chinese to say, okay, there's a lot of Chinese. Chinese know about what actuarial science is. We're good. Let's focus on Malays and Indians. No. Within Chinese, we still have a lot of work to do. Okay. 7 out of 10 from boarding schools and 3 out of 4 from private schools found it harder to find information, as opposed to 8 out of 17 from public schools. Now, this took me totally by surprise. I thought boarding schools and private schools would be the most informed. Again, we can talk about what this means. Does this mean that these are the students that are being spoon-fed? So if they're being spoon-fed, you have to tell them, okay, these are the fields that are out there. You can say that's not good, but these are the top students in the country, right? we kind of want these kind of brains in the actuarial community, right? Again, something to talk about. 6 out of 7 people who were the first in their family to go to university said that it was difficult, but only 13 of 25 people who were not the first in the family. To me, this is a key segment, in my own opinion, is that if you have family, relatives, cousins, whatever, that all went to university, there's open discussions about the types of professions and whatnot. And to me, I would imagine it's much more likely to understand that there's a wide range of professions, each one are good. Whereas if your family's never been to university and you're the first, there would be, again, this is just my own thinking, a focus say, hey, we should be a doctor, you should be a lawyer, you should be an engineer, do something good for the country, something that, you can be something that the parents can be proud of. They can go and they can, they can brag to their friends and neighbors that, my daughter is a doctor. Instead of my son is an actuary, I say, okay, what on earth does that do? Just saying that this is a segment that by right needs to be focused on. So the next question is, was it difficult to convince family members to support your interest in actuarial science? And I was expecting the B40. Now, for the non-Malaysians, we have B40, M40, and T20. B40 is the bottom 40% of wage earners. M40 is the middle 40%, and the T20, the top 20% of wage earners, just something that we'd have in Malaysia. I was expecting the lower income earners to have a lot more challenges to convince your family. So if you're the smart one in the family, you're the one that's heading off to university, that they would say, hey, you better be a doctor or a lawyer, something like that. But there were no noticeable trends here. So interesting. Out of the 5 people who mentioned difficulties, 2 were from the T20. So interesting. So maybe it's the other way around. Maybe if you're from an upper class family, there's a much more of an expectation that you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer. Either way, it says that we might have a bit of a perception problem with actuaries, even till today. For people under 25, there were 2 that said they faced challenges, 50%. Again, this was surprising. I would expect awareness to be growing, but it seems not yet. All respondents who faced challenges said it was due to awareness. And one person's parents were worried that they were going to be selling insurance. So there's just a severe lack of awareness about what actuaries do. When we get to recommendations, then we can talk about that a little bit in terms of, as a society, what ASM can do to increase awareness. So what are some of the other barriers? So one thing that mentioned was lack of mentorship. And 20 out of the 32 correspondents listed this as a challenge. There wasn't enough mentors around. So again, this is definitely something ASM can help with, at least for local university students. 3 out of 4 correspondents under 25 list this as a challenge, along with 10 out of 13 males. So, okay, I can't help it. So this means that women are a lot more independent than men, I would say. And fine, fair comment, right? And then 3 out of 4 correspondents went to private schools and 5 out of 6 from the T20. So again, it's interesting that the ones that you would think would be best prepared to be on their own seem to be the ones that need the most hand-holding. Just interesting. Okay, so financial difficulties was the other one that was mentioned quite a bit. So 7 out of the 32 respondents listed this as a challenge, including 4 out of the 8 from the B40. And actually, I expected it to be a much higher percentage. And again, with all of this, we don't have a lot of respondents. So we're not talking about actuarial, accuracy and all these kind of things. But this is just a way to talk about issues. Things that we look at and we decide as an industry that, okay, these are important things to talk about. Now we can go into much more detailed studies and discuss this a lot more. Okay, so I personally was expecting this to be much more significant because, if you're going to get a job, if you're going to get a job interview, you'll need at least a few exam passes, or if you're the institute, a lot of exemptions. Taking these exams, and sometimes multiple times, takes money, lots of money for somebody in the B40. So I was a bit surprised that it wasn't more focused. Okay, difficulty in obtaining a job. Over 70% of respondents found it somewhat or very difficult to find work. So for for non-Malaysians, I mean, Malaysia is a net exporter of talent. So we have our actuaries are not just in Malaysia, even with companies which are bringing their IFRS 17 work to Malaysia, doing regional work out of Malaysia. Uh, Still, actuaries from Malaysia need to push out in Indonesia, in Singapore, in Thailand, and Vietnam, so many countries. So interestingly, and I'm kind of curious about this, is that the respondent from CAS said it was quite difficult, and 9 out of the 10 from SOA found it difficult, which implied it's much easier if you're IFOA to find work in Malaysia. Why is that? Is that the exemptions? Is it, we have more actuaries now that are IFOA and they're comfortable with IFOA people? Again, open for discussions. I would be very curious what you think. Older respondents found it relatively easier, which is, again, it's expected. There was less known about being an actuary. So, those that did study and graduate probably found it much easier to find positions. Whereas now we've got a lot of universities graduating students. So there is a lot of competition. Both the Indian and mixed respondent found it difficult, and 10 out of 11 Chinese, which again was a little bit different than, I was expecting Chinese to find it a little bit easier, but again, just based on the makeup of ASM and whatnot, but that wasn't the case. And then for respondents who are the first in their family to go to university, 6 out of 7 found it difficult. So again, this shows a need for mentorship, I would say. People that aren't used to this whole process. Okay, so we've been talking about fairly, straightforward, comfortable, light topics. Let's go a bit deeper here. Do you feel your social or economic background affected your ability to find a job? Meaning your job search didn't depend on your grades. It didn't depend on, how you presented yourself at interviews. It depended on what you looked like, what your background was. Should there be anybody like that in a country like Malaysia? Over 40%. Yes. So this is a problem. Whether this is reality or not, this is perception. People are perceiving this to be a problem. So it's something that we really do need to tackle. 6 out of 8 from the B40. And again, to me, this is something we should study. What is it about being in the B40 which makes them feel like, they already have like a leg against them compared to their richer classmates? And what can we do about that as a society? I'm sure there's stuff we can do. The Indian respondent and 9 out of the 20 Malay respondents said yes. Again, this is a bit of an elephant in the room with all of this. I mean, there are some companies where this particular groups are not going to have much of a chance. I mean, just speaking straight on this one. One of my colleagues on my team, she went off. She's Chinese, but she doesn't speak much Mandarin, so she went off to a different company, and she messaged later on and said, "Oh my God, it's so difficult here." She says all of the actuarial discussions, all of the actuarial meetings are 100% in Mandarin. All right, so even if you happen to apply for a job there and you don't speak Mandarin and somehow you make it in, how are you going to feel welcome? How are you going to survive like that? So again, not to bring up difficult issues, but it's something. The person uncomfortable mentioning gender also said yes to this. I just throw that up because there's a lot of reasons why you might be uncomfortable, right? To my understanding, in Malaysia, I've never seen like an openly trans person in actuarial science. Other non-cis, I mean, we're talking about with gay, lesbian, whatever, that yes. I mean, my own company, been I've known at least 5 or 6. It's just, not something we really talk about. So it's not, private life is private life, right? But, interesting. Okay, workplace discrimination. Surely this should be 0, right? Okay. 25% of respondents have either faced racial or gender discrimination at the office or they witnessed it. This is totally unacceptable. Out of 6 cases of racial discrimination, 4 were Malay, 1 was Indian, and 1 was Chinese. So there are trends, but we need to look at this holistically. Yeah, everywhere. Both cases of gender discrimination were females. I mean, as expected. So those are interesting. I mean, something we should dig deeper into. So do you feel your company promotes diversity and inclusion? Well, 18 out of 32 said yes, and they've even participated in activities. So fine, perfect. 9 out of 32 said yes, the company does, but there hasn't been any formal activities. That's again interesting. I mean, even as a society ASM, I don't think we've done any diversity and inclusion activities as far as I'm aware of, but maybe we should, right? The rest, though, 15% do not feel their company promotes diversity and inclusion. And that's probably, the number is probably a bit too low. I mean, people that responded to the survey and whatnot. So again, what can we do here as ASM to help with this? Because this really is too high of a percentage. Okay, so that was the survey, and that's some of the deep issues we're talking about. So let me just give sort of a flow here. Okay, there's no theory here. There's nothing I can download from SOA website or IFOA which says this is how you work on DEI and actuarial science that I'm aware of. This is my own thinking. Okay, at the base level is understanding and awareness of actuarial science as a potential career. We have to ensure that all communities understand this amazing profession exists, that actuaries are involved in societal good just as much as other STEM professions. So just my own thinking, yeah, not based on data at all, is that we've got different communities. And we know, just look around, you know that Malay and Indian are underrepresented in actuarial fields, and especially Indian are underrepresented. Even if you look around a room, and again, I'm talking about people that grew up in Malaysia. The expatriates coming in tend to be Indian, so it looks a little bit more balanced than it really is. Okay, so we need to, let's say that just Indian community for a minute. Again, this is just my own, off the top of my head thinking, is that there's much more of a love and passion for the children being in being a doctor, being a lawyer, these kind of fields. So if they are good in STEM, these are top students, they're just not coming into the actuarial field. And again, if you honestly feel that the best minds are in all aspects of society, that means ASM is not as strong as we could be because we're not attractive to the Indian community. So what can we do here? Something to talk about. We must ensure that all communities have access to strong actuarial programs and universities they're comfortable with. I think this is not so bad here in Malaysia. I know that people have had issues with universities like UiTM and USIM being pure Malay universities or communities, or for the most part. Fair comment. But we also have UKM, UM, all the privates. You know, there are a reasonable selection of universities. But again, that's an honest comment and an honest issue that, we would have to address. And the last side is even if people from all walks of life understand that there is something called beautiful thing called actuarial science, they go into universities, they have universities that they're comfortable with, they go in and they study and whatnot and graduate as actuarial graduates. We still have this third layer, which is that they need to find work. They need to work as an actuarial person. So we need to celebrate employers who actively encourage diversity. And let me just fine tune this, be clear about this. It's one thing to hire with diversity, but the people that are hired also need to feel welcome, need to feel like they're part of the team. And that's a deeper issue. And that also, so we need to celebrate employers who do the whole, very holistic here. And we can do this. We can have surveys, we can have awards. Okay, conclusions and recommendations. And this is based on the survey. Yeah, this is not all just my suggestions. Share what actuaries do in real life. Perhaps develop a YouTube presence with short videos for young people. Social media was mentioned repeatedly in this survey, but in suggestions. Fair, honest comment that we do need to, ASM definitely, if you ask me, should have a much stronger presence than it does now. I mean, look around the rooms of actuarial meetings. We are a young industry. We've got a lot of young analysts, a lot of young people as actuarial. You are 100 times better at social media than I am. By right, we should be able to take short videos of people, take snippets of some of the work that we're doing, or snippets of during these conferences, and putting it online on social media. Give more talks to secondary schools to help raise awareness, especially in underserved communities. Yes, and in particular, how can we use technology to our advantage? How can we do virtual sessions? And I know virtual sessions is not a good solution because the underserved communities are going to have less ability to get online. I run a food bank in Negeri Sembilan, and one of the aspects was during the COVID times, the underserved communities got, so far behind because of the lack of online ability. But nonetheless, educate representatives of universities what actuaries do. So for instance, we've never, as far as I'm aware, we've never had real, subsets of ASM, which are all the lecturers. So the lecturers can get together in sessions, and we encourage all lecturers of local universities being a part of ASM so that they're aware of what we do. We can understand them better and work closely with them. There's certain aspects where we could use real research. So to me, we just simply have not really connected the business community with the universities as closely as we could. So just as an aside. Do more road shows, including actuarial games. Okay, this one stumped me. I don't know what an actuarial game is. If you can tell me, that would be great. Be involved in career fairs towards underserved communities, collaborating with other industries. So this was interesting. So if there are industries which are focused in on underserved communities, how can we connect in with that industry and be involved in career fairs? Fair. Can we have networking events inviting students to join? We've done this a bit, I think, in some of our events. And actuaries should make themselves more prominent. And that's absolutely true. Absolutely true. And again, I was in a committee now on societal good for SOA, and there's really a lot that there's a lot of amazing things actuaries do globally, and we need to celebrate that. Other suggestions: put some sort of aggregator online on the, say, for instance, ASM website on actuarial programs in Malaysia. So explain, what are the actuarial programs in Malaysia? Rank their strengths and weaknesses. The suggestion was globally, but if you ask me, we should start locally. For instance, who are the lecturers in each of the universities which have actuarial programs? Are there any, how many of them are qualified actuaries? PhDs? Or what do we find important? Just go through. I know that'll be sensitive and difficult, but whatever we put together, people could find that very useful. Help local universities to incorporate more practical content into their courses. Yeah, ASM could help with that. It'll be a little bit difficult. Incorporate actuarial science into secondary school education. It's a great idea, way above what ASM can do, but it's a great idea. To be precise, financial literacy, present values, compound interest. There's a lot of things we can be doing. Risk management using insurance, very actuarial in nature. Provide free courses on basic Excel skills, actuarial knowledge, as well as hot topics in the industry. I'm not sure about Excel, but definitely we could put free courses together or through Learned AP, the Actual Partners uh, learning arm. Or, we have enough young people here. We can take snippets of different sessions and take these snippets and put into social media to help people learn and understand. Right. Suggestion was mock interviews. Not sure about that, but okay. Other suggestions talk about discrimination openly. This is what this session is trying to do. Start the discussion in as light, easy a way as we possibly can. It's a tough subject. Emphasize that every individual has their strengths and weaknesses, and a team needs different skills and personalities to complement and inspire each other. This is very true, I was giving a training to one of my clients one time, a Malaysian client. So, okay, there were about 20, 21 actuarial staff in the company. So, okay, there's one Malay boy, okay, very smart boy. He did well, okay. Then there were two Chinese girls, lovely ladies, they were there and working with them. 17 Chinese guys. Okay. And so almost all from the same university as well, Anyway, the different skills, we can complement each other really now. Assist in explaining insurance, such as Perlindungan Tenang via social media. Amazing idea. And I would also add to that, medical insurance deductibles, co-payments. Surely you've seen the news lately of all the challenges in Malaysia with trying to put deductibles and things into our medical products. These are all issues which are actuarial issues. ASM can get involved and just getting the actuarial name out there. Help younger students fall in love with math. Absolutely. Increase visible representation of minority groups within ASM. I thought ASM does a pretty okay job with that, but yes. Okay, beyond ASM. Support in relocating, as most positions are in urban areas. So again, we were talking about B40 and people that are outside, a few major states. And it does seem to be a problem from what people say, that if you're from outside of those areas, it's harder for you to become an actuary because you need to relocate and whatnot. I know it's an excuse, but it's a real comment. Have a strong alma mater, having former students talk to current students. Good. This should be the university, but should ASM sort of encourage this? Offer more internships and evaluate not just by the number of exam passes. Agreed. Some companies are conquered by certain races and communicate in non-professional working languages. Need to deal with that. Again, I've had staff that went to other companies and it was pure Mandarin or whatever. I mean, indeed, it's something that needs to be openly discussed. Be fair to exam takers and non-exam takers. We sacrifice weekend activities for exam increments. We deserve fair annual increment. Don't compare us with non-exam takers. This is so sensitive, but yeah, this is true. That's a problem. Management needs to push the non-performer instead of letting performers to clean up one's mess. Okay, as a boss, this is a hell of a challenge actually, because the strong ones, you would tend to give the strong ones more work and whatever. And yeah, you are right. That is an issue. Beyond ASM, yeah. More opportunities from females, less of a boys club mentality. True. Again, something we should discuss. I was thinking that females have a pretty well represented, but from the comments, it was clear that there's still a long way we need to go by gender. So again, maybe we should have a subcommittee talking about how to improve the situation for females. Don't be racist. Please be open-minded. Just leave that one there. Indeed. Since this is DEI, it's important for the employers to know that some staff are emotionally stable, some are not. Usually those who complained and cried for they're having a lot of workload get more attention and more increment, while those emotionally stable staff deal with it in silence and get ignored. I can feel the pain of the person who wrote this. But yeah, it's an honest comment and fair, but it's kind of beyond what ASM can be involved with. I think, the whole idea of putting this together was just to shoot out what some of the issues might be. This is only step one. This is only step one. After this step, now we need to move forward and dig deeper for some of these issues, because there's a lot to unpack here. ASM really needs to be brave and tackle these issues step by step. Go beyond the sensitive initial issues. Dig down to truly help the underserved communities. If we honestly believe that actuarial science is an amazing profession and we do societal good, we should be ambassadors, try to find, all the best STEM students from across the country, across the different communities. Okay, so with that, I say thank you so much. My email address is here, LinkedIn, happy to interact there. Actualpartnerslearning.com. We have all sorts of courses and whatnot. A number of them are free, so happy for you to be learning. Or put into the comments here in the bottom of this video. Happy to discuss. So thank you so much.